All right, we'll go ahead and kick things off. Thank you all for joining us today for our Elected Official Essentials course on the legislative session. The legislative session begins a week from today, and so we wanted to make sure that we got you all a primer on the legislative session and how it works. It's a pretty big deal for our office and for all of you. And so we wanted to take the time with our my illustrious co-deputy director, Justin Lee, to chat about the session. A few pieces of housekeeping for everyone, and it's the same as always, so bear with me. One, if you wouldn't mind renaming yourself, we register everyone with likely the campaign email address you had. It's helpful to know who's in the
Hello?
room. So if you could go ahead and, two things. If you could go ahead and both mute yourself, because we have a lot of
Hello?
people on this call. Um, that would
Hello?
be very helpful. And then if you could also rename yourself, and you can do that by on your little thumbnail with your image, there's an ellipses, the dot, dot, dot in the top corner. You can click that and click rename. Or if you click on the participants list, you can find your name in the participants list. Again, select that ellipses and rename yourself. Ideally, your name, your role, and the municipality that you're representing. Additionally, we're going to ask that everyone keeps themselves muted throughout, keeps their video on, and uses the chat. That way we can just see who's here, interact as possible. Depending on how time goes and how Justin wants to run things, we might unmute people here and there for a question throughout. Otherwise, we are recording this and it will be posted later, and we will make the slides available later. So if you miss something or anything like that, you don't have to be taking notes unless you would like to be taking notes. And additionally, what is my final point? Oh, yes. We don't really allow the AI chatbots in our meetings as a league policy. So if we see one in there, we're probably going to remove it. So just as a heads up for you there. But again, we'll share the slides, we'll share the recording. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, once this is done, we're always happy to meet with you and to address those. So Justin, with that, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Okay, thank you, Molly. So hello, everyone. For anyone who does not know me, I am Justin Lee. I'm the one of the deputy directors here at the League of Cities and Towns. I oversee the legislative advocacy part of what we do here. So that's why we're doing Legislative 101 today. I do want to emphasize just a couple of things. One, this is Legislative 101. There are no dumb questions about how the legislative process works. It can be pretty dense sometimes, and we're going to stay fairly high level, but feel free to ask questions. I will answer them to my ability. The second piece is we're not going to be talking a lot about, if at all, about policy today. So if you were at LPC yesterday or you're planning to come to LPC in the future, we talk about specific bills, about subjects, about the different policies we're wrestling with. This is really more process oriented. So if you're really excited to talk property tax, like we did yesterday at LPC, or you have a really specific bill that you're interested in, that's probably a question to shoot to us offline or after the webinar. Today, we're really going to be focused on the process of things. So with that, let me share my slides and we will get going. All right, can everybody see those? Are those showing up all right? Perfect. All right, legislative 101. So legislative session basics. These are the things that everyone thinks they might know, but let's remind everyone anyway. So one, the legislative session begins the first Tuesday after the third Monday in January. So a week from today, session begins. Every year, that's how it works. Until the legislature changes their mind or changes something around. So basically, the day after Martin Luther King Day, that is when the legislative session starts. Constitutionally, the legislative session ends 45 calendar days later. Constitution says the legislative session cannot go longer than 45 calendar days, excluding state and federal holidays, which means session runs from January 20th to March 6th at midnight. And that midnight is a very real thing. If a bill is halfway through the discussion, when that clock flips from 11:59 to midnight, they stop discussing that bill, and that one dies. Some fun legislative history there. Back in the days before everyone had cell phones and clocks with them everywhere, sometimes they would put a sheet or a cover over the clocks in the chambers if they wanted to talk for a few more minutes after that, pretending they didn't know what time it was. But that really doesn't work with technology today. The governor can veto bills 20 days after the session ends is his deadline. So that's March 26th. And the last day for a veto override session is 60 days after the session ends, May 6th, which is also the date for the normal effective date for bills. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is when we talk about bills, but 60 days after the session. So we have 45 days of session, and then we have 60 days after that where there's still potential for bills to be either vetoed or for the legislature to override a veto from the governor. So a lot of fun coming up there. Everyone probably knows this one, but just in case not, there are 29 senators, and they each have a 4-year term, and there are 75 representatives in the House, and they each have a 2-year term. So giving us our 104 legislators that we need to deal with every session. Now, here is the most high level way to explain how bills pass through the system. There are some phenomenally complex ways to explain how a bill goes through the system, but I'm going to give you a few high level steps that if you remember these, you'll know most of what's going on with the bills. So this one may be pretty obvious, but a bill must pass both the Senate and the House with a majority vote to be passed, to become law. You've got to pass both houses. Pretty basic. There is not an exception to that rule. A bill has to pass both bodies. Everything else I'm about to explain does have some kind of exception to it. Before being heard on the House or Senate floor, a bill will be heard in the committee. So every bill will go to a committee before it goes to the floor. There's an asterisk next to that one because there are exceptions to that. They can get around that. 3, a bill has to get a majority vote to move to the next step of the process. So whether that is in committee or that is on the floor, the bill has to get a majority vote to move on to the next step of the process, which means a bill can die in a committee, a bill can die in the House before it gets to the Senate. It can move from the House and then die in a Senate committee. They've got to keep getting that majority vote to keep moving forward. And I saw there's a question there in the chat. Oh, that's Molly. Not that I don't love you, Molly, but I don't care about your question. Because it's a comment. All right, skip that one. All right, the House will vote one time on each bill on the floor. So this is important. The Senate will vote 2 times on each bill on the Senate floor. There's a constitutional requirement that each bill gets 3 readings, and we're not going to get too deep into that. But the House and the Senate have interpreted that and operationalized that a little bit differently. So the House will vote on a bill 1 time, and the House is done with it. The Senate will vote on a bill 2 times, one moving it from the second to third reading calendar, and one the third reading calendar going out for final passage. So if you're watching a bill in the Senate, the first vote is not the final vote. If you're watching a bill in the House, if they vote on it, they are done and they're not coming back to it. All of that being said, there are exceptions to almost all legislative rules or parliamentary procedure that allows bills to skip committees, to suspend rules, to be brought back once a bill has been shot down. But for the most part, you don't need to worry about that. That's legislative 101. The vast majority of bills go through the process that we just discussed. So that's pretty simple. Are the committees subject to the same timeline? So that's a good question. Yes, the committees run on the exact same timeline during the legislative session as the floor. So the legislative session begins on the 20th. Committees will not start meeting until legislative session begins. Committees will run up until usually 2 or 3 days before the end of the session, depending on the workload that they have. So the committees go through the exact same timeline as everything else. So great question. All right, let's move it on. Let's go to le.utah.gov. So this is the legislature's website, le.utah.gov. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to share another screen because I want to just take you to that website really quickly. If I can get out of that slide deck, here we go. I want to take you to the website really quickly. There are a lot of phenomenal resources on their website. and I want to show them to you. All right, I think, can you see that? Are you seeing le.utah.gov now? Okay, perfect. All right. There are several things you can do here on le.utah.gov. And where I want to start is finding your legislators. If you don't know who your legislators are, I would definitely encourage you to go figure that out, go find that out. But if you go up here to legislators, you can click down here on Find by Address or Map. And you can do a couple of things. One, you can scroll in and you can just place a pin on the map and it will show you who the representatives are for that. Or you can put in an address. I'm putting in 350 North State Street because that's the capital. And that seemed like a pretty safe address. And it will tell you who the representative and who the senator are for that given address. So if you need to look up who your legislators are, who your senators are, representatives, go put in an address. You can look that up. If you know a district, you can just click on a district. For whatever reason, you know they're Senate District 6, but you don't know what Senate District 6 looks like, you can put that in and go look up that district. So if you want to take some time, go play around with that. You can go find out who your legislators are. The other things you can look up on here is you can look up the full Senate or House roster. So if we're in the LPC or in a morning briefing or a meeting, wherever it is, and we reference the legislator and you just don't know who that is, which is fine, you can just go to the roster, look them up, see their district, see their picture. And the last thing I'll add on that is you can also go look at the seating chart. So here I'm going to click on the Senate seating chart. So again, I was under legislators. I just scrolled over here to seating chart. And if you're sitting in the House or the Senate gallery, looking down at the floor, this will tell you who's seated where, so you can match names to faces that way. So website has a lot of great ways to look up who your legislators are, and then to find out more about them. If we just pick a legislature, and we'll just pick Lincoln Fillmore because he's right there. Oh no, they're going to do it that way. Hold on, we're going to back up. We'll just pick a legislator, Tom Peterson, because he's up front here. If you click on their page, it will tell you the county that they represent, the committees that they serve on, and also you can view their sponsored legislation. And this is helpful as we're talking about different bills. If we say, I don't remember the bill number or the name, but I do remember that Representative Tom Peterson is running it, you can just go look up Tom Peterson and then view his sponsored legislation. And it will show you all the different bills that he is either sponsoring himself or for sponsoring for a senator. So quick ways to find out bills that legislators are running. On that, how else do we find out about bills? Great thing about le.utah.gov is the search function is very good. So if you know a bill number, it's as simple as just putting in a bill. So you just put in HB 13, for example. You don't have to worry about putting a space, just HB 13, and it will pull up HB 13. So I talked about space, you notice it's actually HB 0013. Nobody calls it that. If you type in HB 13, you will find it, and then you can pull up that bill. A couple of other ways, you can also go on bills up here and you can browse them by the session. You can look up the bills that are that way. They have a lot of different ways of looking up bills. I'm not going to go through every one of those right now, but if you're trying to find a bill, you can search it by legislator, you can search it by bill number, you can search it by topic. There's a lot of ways to find those. And you can always just reach out to us. We spend all day, every day during the session looking at and looking up bills. So if you're not sure where something is, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can definitely help you find that. So any questions about le.utah.gov or how to find bills? We're going to talk about how to read a bill here in just a second. But any questions there before I move on? Great. Then let's talk about how to read a bill. So I already pulled up a couple of bills here. One, this is SB 15. So if you look up a bill, you'll have this up here. SB 15 gives you the title of the bill. Pretty straightforward. Over here on the right-hand side, it'll show you who the bill sponsor is. This one's Senator Ronald Winterton. It'll also tell you who the attorneys are if you cared about that for some specific reason. And then as you scroll down the bill, it will give you a general description of what the bill does. And if you're just looking quickly to find out if this is a bill you care about or not, or just the highlight, the general description will give you a pretty good idea. The highlighted provisions will go into a little bit more depth, telling you what the bill does in some plain language. And when I say plain language, I'm going to say plain language in quotes because it's plain language according to the drafting attorneys, but it's not the legal language. If you scroll down a little bit more, here's where you get to the actual code. Now, they have done a couple of things to make it pretty simple to read this. If there's a strike through, that is language that is being removed from code. So here you see this blue section that's being stricken through. That is language that, if this bill passes, will be removed from code. Um, in the last couple of years, legislatures also started putting that in blue, makes it even easier to see. But blue and stricken through, which was not a purposeful rhyme, is language that's being removed from code. If you look at a bill, so here's another one, HB 63, livestock watering amendments, um, and you scroll down, you see all of this text is underlined and red. Underline means this is new language that is being added to code. So if it's red and underlined, this is new language. If it's blue and stricken through, that's being taken away. But that's the quick and easy way to read those bills. Um, Not expecting you to go through and read every single bill. That's not your job. That's our job to go through and read all of those bills. But if you're reading the bills and looking at them, it's pretty simple to just say if it's underlined, it's new. If they're striking it out, that's being removed, and that gives you a pretty good idea of what the bill is doing. The last thing I want to know on this part about the bill language is the effective date down here at the bottom. Most bills will have a regular effective date 60 days after the end of the session. So May 6th here, just regular effective date. Sometimes they will have a delayed effective date, and that will be marked there at the bottom of the bill. So it may say this bill will take effect on July 1st, 2026, or it could take place even further down the road than that. But that's how we know when that bill is going to take effect. There is not a lot of information on this yet because we're not in session, but you can also look up the status of the bill and it will tell you the votes that it has been gone through so far. Of course, no bill has had any votes yet, so there's nothing here. And you can also go and look up if you would like to watch the floor debate or watch the committee discussion. They will post that under the hearings and debates tab there. So le.utah.gov, it's a great website. It really is. If you want to go look at other states' legislators' websites, they're nowhere near as easy to navigate as ours is. So we'll at least give the legislature that. They have a pretty good website, despite all the other things we have to deal with. And again, if you ever have questions about how to find things, about what's going on the website, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can help you find things. Like I say, we're on here pretty much all day, every day. We live on that website. So with that, let me reshare again. Back to the slide deck. All right. Going to talk about a little bit here, just an idea of where the last session went. And this gives you a little bit of an idea of why we track so many bills that we track, why we bring up so many bills to you, and why we have to operate the way we do on some things. So back in 2025, we had 959 bills introduced during the legislative session. You see there at the bottom corner, that's not the number that passed, but 959 bills were introduced. That was 134 more bills than the prior 9-year average. So last year was a landmark bill or year for bills. We just had a ton of bills that came out. On top of that, bills can be amended or substituted. Substitute is basically the same thing as amendment, just more words. But there were 1,110 substitutes and amendments that were adopted during that legislative session. So not only are the bills out there, there are iterations of the bill upon iterations of the bills that are out there. Good news is that was 6 fewer than last year, but 118 above the prior year average. So the trend that we are seeing is more and more bills coming out every year, more and more substitutes and amendments, just basically more to deal with. We tracked 279 bills last year, 61 more bills than the prior 3-year average. So we had a lot last year. And then ultimately 582 bills passed last year, which is 9 fewer than the previous year, but that is still the second highest number of bills that have ever passed in the legislature. Get on the right page here. Oh, I gotta do slideshow. That's why it's not doing what I want. Okay, record number of bills. You can just see this again, just with this bar graph. The number of bills is going up every year. In the last 10 years, we've added 130 new bills a year. And the bills passed is not been on the same steady stream of always up every year, but the trend is certainly going up and not going down. So more and more to deal with every year. This is just kind of interesting to see the number of bills coming out of each house. But last year, of the 962 total bills drafted, 568 of those were House bills. Makes sense. There's more House members than there are senators, so we do see more bills there. But 342 Senate bills was a pretty big deal. We rarely see Senate bills tick up into the 300s. So there were a lot more bills coming out there. We honestly don't see House bills go up into the 500s that often either. But just a lot of bills. So all of this to answer the question, which we get asked a lot, is why do we engage on bills that we don't like from a strategy perspective? And one, there's a lot of bills out there. We've got to deal with them. Two, it's really important to understand, and we saw this trend more and more the last couple of years. Most bills that are failing procedurally. Now, what do I mean by procedurally? It means they're not getting voted down. They're not going to committee or going on the House floor and getting a no vote. They're dying because they don't make it to a committee, or they're getting held up in the rules process, or they may just be dying on the board at the end of the session, meaning they were some of those bills that were on the board, but they hit midnight and those bills just went away. So most bills failing are failing procedurally. They're not failing from votes. Number two here, committees are advancing 90.3% of bills. That means if a bill gets into committee, there's less than a 10% chance that that bill will fail in committee. Number three, only 2.5% of bills that make it to the floor fail on the floor. So why do we have to engage on bills we don't like? Because the truth is the way the legislature is operating lately is there's a very good chance if a bill does not die procedurally that it will pass. So unfortunately, oftentimes we're in the business of trying to make bad bills less bad. And there are bills that we certainly work on that die and go away. But the legislature is passing more and more bills, and they're being deferential to one another in bills that are both introduced and then go through the whole process. So we need to engage on bills because if not, a worse version of the bill is likely to pass out than what the original bad version of the bill is. And we do have a very good track record of making bad bills less bad, and at least cutting back some of the problems that we see there. So that's kind of the legislative process as far as bills, how we engage on those bills, how many bills are coming through, and how you can look those bills up. We're going to pivot and talk about how we go through our legislative policy process and how we take positions on all our bills through the Legislative Policy Committee. So here's a picture us meeting at the Utah State Capitol in the Senate building every Monday, as we'll talk about. And we get a packed house of people there, both at the Capitol and online. So, what is the Legislative Policy Committee? That is the committee that gives us the guidance on our bills and ultimately takes the position on the bills. We're unique. Very few leagues or municipal leagues across the country check in with their members every week during a legislative session, and we find it very valuable. One, to let you know where we're at, and two, to get the guidance and the feedback we need from you on all of these bills that we're dealing with. So every city and town can appoint 3 voting members from their mayor, council members, or senior staff. If you have someone from your city who serves on the ULCT board, you get a 4th person. The board member is automatically part of the LPC, so you'll get 4 people from your city if you have someone serving on the board. But for the majority of you, 3 voting members from your mayor, council members, or senior staff. If you're not sure who your LPC members are, you can reach out to us. I'm guessing Cassie just dropped it in the chat, or she's going to. Oh, and let me back up here. I'll give these questions in a second. But you can reach out to us. We can let you know who is on that legislative policy committee. We do need to get your names in before the session starts. so we can get our voting list up to date. Do you send the members emails weekly? Yes, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let me back up here to a couple things I think I missed. Is there a difference in content of a House bill versus a Senate bill? That's a good question. From Harrisville, no, there's no difference in content. It's just whatever the sponsor decides to put in there. So the only thing that a House bill versus a Senate bill tells you, so if it's an HB versus an SB, is the originating body. So if it's a senator, it will be a Senate bill, SB. If it's a representative, it will be a House bill, HB. So that's a good question. How do we know if our city has sent over our members already? Again, reach out to us. We can let you know. And Cassidy's putting in information about how you can look that up as well into the chat. Let's see. Does the city have to be a member of the ULCT to have 3 voting members? Yes. If you are not a member of the LPC or not a member of ULCT, you cannot be in our LPC committee. You can watch. We keep the LPC open so you can watch that, but only ULCT members can vote in the LPC. And let's see. And that I think we're up to date there on the chat.
There's one more question about our emails, Justin.
Oh, is there one more about emails? All right. I jumped over that one. Oh, yeah. I'm going to talk about the emails here in just a second. So we'll cover that one in a second. So we meet weekly during the session. We meet sort of monthly during the interim. We don't meet every single month. We do take some months off here and there, depending on the needs that we have. But we do meet every week during the Capitol, starting the second week of session. So session starts on a Tuesday. We have local officials day on Wednesday next week, and then we will meet that following Monday for our first LPC of the session. We do a lot of Slido. If you haven't had the joy of us doing Slido yet, we do a lot of Slido to get feedback. We ask research questions, then we take the positions on the bills. The LPC takes positions by a 60% consensus vote of those in attendance in person and remotely at the LPC. So in order to get a bill position, we need a 60% consensus. And in just a second here, I'll talk about what those positions are. Let's see. Question here. You mentioned bad bill. How does the league define a bad bill? That is a huge question. The quick answer is, well, there's multiple different answers on that. If it impacts our authority in some way, a lot of bills will take away city authority or have an unfunded mandate. Those are some of the things that we look at in defining whether or not something is a bad bill or not. And also, that's part of what we do at LPC, is there are bills that we will bring to the Legislative Policy Committee and say, this is what the bill does. You tell us, members, is this a bad bill? Is this a problematic bill? Help us understand what the bill does. So there's not just one simple definition of a bad bill. A bill could be bad for a whole lot of different reasons. One, it could be a policy that's problematic. Two, it could take away our authority. Three, it could be an unfunded mandate. A whole host of reasons there that a bill could be considered a quote unquote bad bill. But there's not just one definition of that. I will talk about on the next slide what our actual positions are. And bad bill is not actually one of the positions that we can take. The question here was, does the Utah House have the power of the purse like the U.S. House? And the quick answer is yes. The House and the Senate set the budget for the state. And so, yes, the governor puts out a budget, but it is just it's a bully pulpit budget. The governor's budget doesn't have any real effect. The House and the Senate, through the appropriations process, set the budget for the state. So ultimately, yes, the House and the Senate in the state do have the power of the purse here. All right, jumping forward to the dates that we have. This is pretty simple. Easy to remember, it's Mondays at noon. The only difference is the week of President's Day. We don't meet on Monday. Don't get on President's Day. We won't be there. We will be at the office, probably going through the bill tracker, but we will not be at LPC. So that week we do meet on Tuesday. So the week of the 16th, we will meet on Tuesday. All right, let's talk about actual Legislative Policy Committee positions. In our bylaws, there are only specific positions that we can actually take on bills. And like I said earlier, bad bill is not actually a position that we take. So one, support, and I flippantly put good bill. This is a bill that we like. It's a bill that benefits cities in some way. So that's a bill that's a good bill. We support that bill. Oppose, we oppose bills for, like I said, a host of reasons. Unfunded mandates takes away our authority. It is unworkable. It's not something we could even do, and we'll take a motion to oppose. Neutral is a bill exactly like the sound is where we're neutral on it. We're neither supporting or opposing it. And generally, the way we've tried to use neutral in the last couple of years is in bills that we've negotiated toward neutral. A lot of times there will be a bill that we oppose that has problems with it. We will negotiate on that bill, and that will sometimes then get it to a neutral place. They've taken out the bad parts. We're not really to a place where we're going to support it, but we could go to neutral. So that's something we can use in negotiations is getting a bill off of opposed to neutral. Um, if we either support or oppose a bill, that's something we will get up in a policy or in a legislative committee, and we'll get up and say we oppose this bill and here's the reasons in that public comment period. And legislators generally don't like it when people get up and oppose their bills. So it is a useful tool for us to be able to negotiate toward neutral. Monitor is one that we added just last year, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We're just watching that bill. We're just monitoring it for situational awareness. It's either a bill that we're neutral on, but even maybe less than neutral on. We're just watching it because it may impact us. We may need to train on it, but it's something that really isn't that big of a deal. We also monitor bills just in case something happens to it. So we may not be too concerned about it now, but there's potential for shenanigans to come into play. So we're monitoring that. No position is one that we do not get to very often. I mentioned that 60% consensus that we need to take a position. No position means we did not get to that 60%. We're split on this one, and we will not take a position on it. It just basically means as a league, we do not have a consensus. You as a city or as an individual may have thoughts on that, but as a body, we did not get to consensus, so we will have a no position on that one. But this happens, no position actually happens very rarely. We only had one bill last year that was a no position. And then position pending, again, is exactly what it sounds like. We just haven't taken a position yet. And that's for several different reasons. One, our bill tracker is got a lot of bills on there right now, and it doesn't even say position pending because we're working to populate that and take those positions. But as a new bill drops and we're working through it, it kind of defaults to position pending. We may also be position pending because we are negotiating heavily on a bill, and we haven't wanted to go support, oppose, neutral, or anything yet because we are just position pending and negotiating heavily on it. So there are some bills that are even very big bills that we may be position pending on for 6 weeks until we finally get to a resolution. And we're working in good faith, and the legislature is working in good faith with us. So we don't really have a reason to publicly oppose it yet. But those are a couple of reasons why we may be position pending on something. Finally, there at the bottom, you see there may be a political reason to take a position on a bill, or political reasons that don't match how strongly we feel about a policy. So what do I mean by that? Maybe we negotiated really hard with the legislator on one bill and got them to a better place. And there's another bill we honestly just don't care that much about, but they say, hey, it would be really helpful if you could support me on this thing. So politically, we may support a bill that we just don't care that much about, but we do need to maintain a good relationship with a legislator because of other things. Unfortunately, bills during the session, and many of you work in politics now, they don't exist in a vacuum. We are dealing with people, humans who are running multiple bills, and although Bill A should not necessarily impact what Bill B does, they do sometimes because of the players involved or other reasons. So there may be political reasons that we support a bill, not because we care that much about the policy, but politically we need to. The important thing is all of our bill positions are public. And if you have a question on why we have a position on any bill, you can always ask us. At the LPC, you'll have an opportunity to take positions on bills, to ask us to change a position on a bill. And that's where we do that. And if the other members agree to that and we take the vote, then we can change those positions. When we present bills, we'll have a staff recommended position, but that is a staff recommendation. It's not the law. So before I jump off this, just looking at the chat really quick. Let's see. Do appropriations bills have to originate in the House like they do at the national level? Okay, I see the question there. No, appropriations bills can come out of the House or Senate. So both the House and the Senate can run appropriation bills, and they will run different bills. But the bills will all have to be voted on by both the House and the Senate before the budget is set. So going back to the appropriations question, I think that catches us up there. This is just an example of what we did last year, the 279 bills that we tracked. We supported 34, opposed 26. We're neutral on 56. And then, like I said, we added monitor last year, and 161 of those were monitored, one no position. And we did end the session with one position pending because the bill just sort of went away and we didn't feel a need to ultimately take a position on that one. If you want to go see our ULCT bill tracker, you can scan this QR code that will get you there. We are updating the tracker regularly. The one thing I'll ask right now is if you look at the bill tracker and you say, one, there are a lot of bills on there, you're right, because we're sifting through what we care about and what that looks like. And two, you may look at the bill tracker and say, you guys haven't taken positions on anything yet. And that's true. We only have taken positions on a handful of bills as we're going through that. But when we get to our LPC in a couple of weeks, we will have positions on those bills that are out there. If you have a suggested position on a bill, again, please reach out to us and let us know. And that's something that we will take to the LPC next time we meet. This is really quick. If you come to the LPC, we will show you draft legislation. You'll see the number of the bill, the name of the bill. We'll have a QR code that takes you to the bill, so you don't even have to go to le.utah.gov yourself to look that up. You'll see there in the bottom left, we'll have our staff recommendation of a position, and sometimes we'll have some explanatory things in parentheses. So position pending, but we're negotiating to support. Sometimes it will say oppose, and in parentheses, motion to hate, because we really, really oppose it. We don't have anything that says really, really oppose. There's nothing in the bylaws that allows that. But if you come to LPC, you will hear some of your colleagues sometimes make a motion to hate, not just oppose, but that's not a real thing. New next Tuesday for LPC. So no, there will be no LPC next week. Our first LPC will be on the 26th, that Monday. So from here on out, LPCs will be on Monday. But we will not have one the first week of the session since because there's no Monday session work going on. So good question in the chat there. And then again, this is a little bit of a joke, a little bit not of a joke, but we'll put the useful information up there about the key provisions of the legislation. Sometimes we are very thorough and we will have less useful information. And then sometimes we'll have extremely niche parts of the legislation up there because your attorneys ask us about them and we want to answer their questions. Our communications manager, which Cassidy actually has a longer title, but that's a quick one, hates the section where we just drop a lot of little stuff in, but she does a good job of trying to make our slides look better and more communicative. So to the question that was just asked, so thank you for teeing that one up. We meet in the Senate building for LPC. So this is an overhead view of the Capitol complex, which we need to update a little bit because construction is getting closer to being ended. But the east building in the Capitol complex is the Senate building. That's where we meet. And then when you go into the Senate building, if you go upstairs to room 210, that is the committee room that we are meeting in. So committee room 210 in the Senate building, excuse me, is where we'll meet. There was a question earlier about emails. So during the legislative session, we as a league put out nightly emails. And by nightly, I mean weekday nightly. We don't email you on Saturday and Sunday night, maybe. But we do normal Monday through Friday, we will be sending out emails. And we give you an overview of what we dealt with that day, committees that we may have testified in, things that we need feedback on, pithy comments, and then potential action that we need from you as our members. The one thing I will say about the nightly emails is the legislative session moves very quickly. If we have an ask of you in the nightly email, And look, I understand everyone's got other things going on, so I'm not saying everyone needs to drop everything they're doing every time we make an ask. But if you're going to get us feedback on something, 1 or 2 days is probably your max to get us that feedback, unless we put a different date on it. Everything in the session moves very, very quickly. So if we ask for feedback, don't put that on your I'm going to get to that in 3 or 4 days list. If you can get us feedback in the next day or two, that is great. If not, just don't worry about it. We will let you know if we need other things. But when we ask for feedback, we are pretty much always saying we need this in the next 24 to 48 hours, unless we say otherwise. We will also put video updates out on Monday. So if you missed LPC or you just want to get the quick 3 minute version of LPC, we'll do a quick video on Mondays. And on Thursdays, we'll give you a quick midweek update as well. So if you just want to catch, 3 to 5 minute video about where we're at on some things, you can watch those videos that we put out during the Monday and Thursday. Let me check the chat here just to make sure. Oh, I think Cassidy's answering the email question. Great. That's the building that was just updated. So no, the building that was just updated is the new state office building, or whatever we're calling that. That is the north building. That is the brand new building. We meet in the east building, which has been there for several years now. So we'll be in the east building. Don't go to the brand new building. You can go there after LPC or before, but you will not find us there. Um, Action alerts. So during the session, we will send out alerts that are not in the nightly email. And action alert is when we need an immediate response from our members to reach out to legislators on a bill that is imminently up for a vote. So if we send out an action alert and you see an action alert come in, that means we do in fact need you to drop everything you're doing, unless you're holding a baby or something, and reach out to your legislator right then. We only send action alerts out when something is imminently up for a vote, and we need you to reach out to your legislator right then and tell them, vote yes or vote no on a given bill. So if you see action alert, that's the one time I will say we're looking for immediate response. And again, with all that, we know people have things going on. We have a lot of members and a lot of people reaching out to legislators. Things will not fall apart if you cannot drop everything you're doing to do an action alert. But if you see that and you have the capacity to reach out, action alert, we need it immediately. If you wait 10 minutes, the vote may be done. We try to time it that closely. Action needed is something that we'll generally send in a nightly email, sometimes in a standalone. But an action needed means we do need to reach out to a legislator on an issue, but a vote is not imminent. So if you see action alert, that's imminent. If you see action needed, that will be in the nightly email. And we do need you to do some action. We do need you to reach out to your legislator. But generally, that's what we're going to put in a nightly email. There is not an imminent vote. So you can take a few more minutes before you reach out to them. But anytime we say action, we do need you reaching out to your legislators. That is one of the greatest strengths we have as a league is all of you as members. We have a great staff. We're up at the Hill every day, but really the legislators, I don't know if appreciate is the right word, but are impacted by you reaching out to them, and they do appreciate it. Sometimes when we tell them no, again, appreciate not as much, but you do have an impact, and I saw that in the chat there. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but the more you have a connection with your legislator, the more they're hearing from you before those action alert moments, the more impactful that can be when we send out those action alerts. Also, when we give you an action alert, we will give you some talking points. We'll give you things to bring up. We will help you out on that. But if you see that action alert, again, reach out right then. If it's action needed, reach out pretty soon, but it's not quite as imminent. So with all that, that's kind of how we operate through the session with the LPC, with our emails, with everything. We're going to talk a little bit about how to interact with legislators. And maybe a few tips and tricks on how to do it. The first one, and I don't have on the list, but remember your legislators are also humans, and they're up there dealing with, like you saw, hundreds of pieces of legislation, and in fact, thousands of legislation and amendments. So your legislator may not be the expert on a bill that you're reaching out to them on. And so you can give them a little bit of leeway that they may not always know what you're talking about or understanding, but they still have a vote, and we need you to reach out to them. But don't be scared of them. They're humans. You can talk to them. So one, be polite and professional. This should go without saying, but it's important. Be polite and professional to legislators. Um, they have a busy job. They have a lot going on. Being polite and professional, even if you're telling them that you hate their bill, is a useful thing and it has good long-term dividends. Number two, be concise, particularly during session. The first five I'm going to talk about are very session oriented. I'll talk about a few after that are all the time oriented, but be concise. Talking to many legislators, um, again, they're voting on hundreds of bills in committees and on the floor. They're hearing dozens of bills in a given day. Um, they really do not have the time to read a five-page treatise on every little bill or every big bill, even. So the more concise you can be, the more effective you will be in your communication. I've talked to a lot of legislators, and their phone numbers are fairly accessible now. If you get good relationships with them, you probably have maybe their personal phone number, but a quick text with, I have concerns on this bill, vote no, call me for more information, goes just as far as a very, very long text with a ton of information. Getting their attention with the vote no or the vote yes, and then please follow up with questions can go a long way. But being concise is going to be very effective, particularly during the session. Three, be prepared. And now this one is on us a little bit because we reach out to you and say, hey, we need you to reach out on this bill. But yeah, be prepared when you're talking to a legislator. Know which bill it is that you're talking about. Know what it is that you're asking for. Being prepared is also helpful. If we say, hey, go talk to your legislator, and you say, Justin, I'm just not sure what to talk about, reach out to us, talk to us. We can help you out there. If you've never met your legislators and you're on the Hill and you need the intro, we do know all the legislators and happy to make those introductions on the Hill if you need that as well. But we can help you be prepared on that. Be focused. Pick your big fish. So when you're talking to your legislators, again, there are 50 things you could probably talk to them about, and a bill may have 50 things wrong with it, but pick the biggest things that are wrong with it and focus on those, and then we can deal with some of the smaller stuff later, depending how things go. But be focused. And this goes a little bit with concise, but pick the biggest things you want to talk to them about. They're hearing from dozens of people all day, every day, from other cities, from other lobbyists. So be focused and pick your biggest things that you need to talk to them about. And then be organized. If you have talking points, if you have things you need to talk to them about, be organized in how that's presented. Again, a treatise with a lot of information doesn't go as far as maybe five really concise bullet points that will get your point across. So during session, we have to be fast. We have to be concise. We have to be quick. And we can do it all while we're being polite and professional. Outside of session, we want you to still be talking to your legislators. We want you to be interacting with them, building relationships with them, but also talking about your city's needs. So while the next few things I'm going to talk about can also be used during session, these sometimes take a little bit more time. And so outside of session, some of these work as well. So one, recognize helpful things that your legislators do, and you can show appreciation. This is something as a league, we talk about the bad bills that are out there. There are also some good bills that happen. There are things that we work on that are helpful to us. There's new funding streams that come into place. And sometimes, for your city, a legislator may have helped you with an appropriation, but recognize those helpful things that those legislators do and show that appreciation will go a long way. Demonstrate your willingness to be a partner. A lot of times legislators are running bills because they don't know better. Someone came up to them and said, we've got a problem with this thing, or our city's doing this thing, and legislator reaches out to us, or legislator reaches out to you, and it's really easy to push back on that. But also, if they're trying to solve a problem, you can demonstrate your willingness to be a partner in solving that problem. One, it may just be as simple as showing them that there's not really a problem here. Let me show you why. Let me show you how our city does this. And you've then become a resource to them in helping a constituent that you both may share. Or there may be some legislation that we do, in fact, need to update the code on, and you can partner with them to do that. So, as you're talking with legislators, demonstrate that willingness to be a partner. It's not always an adversarial relationship. It's often not actually an adversarial relationship. This goes back to the same thing outside of session, but briefly share your top priorities or needs. During session, those are going to have to be concise. Outside of session, you can share a little bit more about your top priorities or needs, and you may have more time to show them things. You can take them on a tour. You can show them the park that needs updating, the street that needs to be updated. You can show them how things are working in your city, but share those top priorities and needs. Again, I've underlined top there because you can't tell them every single priority and need you have and really expect them to work with you on every single thing, but prioritize those top things that you need. Pivot based on your audience. This is an important one, and this is just some communication strategy. If your legislator has already said yes, move to something else. If you're in sales, don't talk past the sale. They've already said yes, you can move on to something else. Even if you brought 3 staff members with you who had phenomenal presentations ready to go, if the legislator is already there, you can pivot and move on to something else. Similarly, if a legislator says, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just not with you on this one, don't beat the dead horse. You can pivot to something else. And you may also, as you interact with the legislators, find out different legislators have different expertise. They serve on different committees. They know about different things. So if you're talking transportation, and Wayne Harper is one of your senators, Wayne Harper is a great person to talk transportation with. He can talk about that all day long, but he may not have another subject that he is quite as deep in. So pivot a little bit, know your audience, and then you can talk to them on the things that both they understand, or move on to things when you've agreed or ultimately disagreed. Finally, give legislators some time to share their thoughts. This is not usually a difficult one. Legislators have a lot of things they want to talk about. But when you bring your legislators to your city and you interact with them, also find out from them, what are the things that they have on their plates? What are the things that they want to share with you? What are their priorities? And when you hear their priorities, you start the cycle over again. That gives you an opportunity to be a partner, to see where your priorities align. And then depending what their priorities are, you can pivot to talk about those versus what you may have wanted to talk about. Most of this is basic human interaction stuff. Again, if you need help interacting with your legislators, setting things up with your legislators, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, not just during session, but all throughout the year. That is a lot of what we do is interacting with those legislators. We've covered how the session works at the very basic level. We've talked about how it works at our level with LPC, with emails, with the bill tracking. We've talked a little bit about how to interact with your legislators. So with that, happy to take any questions for the last couple of minutes we've got here. And will not be offended if you don't have questions. Okay, question. Is email, phone call, or text more effective? Is email effective at all? That's a great question coming out of White City. Text is the most effective, unquestionably the most effective way to interact with people at the Capitol. Every legislator I have ever talked to has said text is the most effective way to get with them. One couple things going back to what I talked about, you generally have to be a little bit more concise in a text, and that is helpful. They're on the floor or in committees. It makes it harder to take phone calls all the time. So oftentimes a text as the opening part of the communication may lead to a phone call. But generally, I reach out to legislators via text and say, hey, I need to talk to you about this bill. Let me know when you'd like to chat. And that may lead to a phone call or an in-person meeting. But text is usually your quickest way to get them. Is email effective at all? I don't want to say it's not effective at all, but email is not phenomenally effective either. If you're going to email, and this is what will make it more effective, let them know that you're a constituent. Let them know that you're in their district. or that you have something really specific about one of their bills. Blast emails are phenomenally ineffective. Um, you can ask any legislator if they get 100 emails and it's a copy and paste, the brute force does not actually have the effect people hope for. Legislators are looking for emails from their constituents, from the elected officials in their district, and then all the other rules apply. Longer is not better, more concise is more effective. Um, but text is your best. Email works if you're being specific and you're from their district. And you also need to know that their intern is likely the first one to see an email. And most interns are trained to filter out things that aren't from the district. That's just how most of them operate. Is email outside of session time effective? Um, no. Outside of session, they I don't even know how often they check their legislative emails outside of session. Text is still your best way to go. Outside of session, they may not be checking their legislative phone or email as often, but your text is your best shot to get a legislator any time of the year. Email is going to be less effective. During the interim, legislators also do not have interns. And so you're really just going straight to the legislator at that point. Depends on the legislator, but text is always your best opening foray. And then, yeah, you can get the number for the intern too, which can help set up the schedule. Yes. If you're looking to set up something with a legislature, the interns, are the way to go, though they've been started last year. They actually posted the intern phone number and email list. Um, Emailing an intern is an effective way to get a hold of a legislator, not necessarily emailing the legislator, but the interns do have their emails as well. So yeah, intern list is out there. But again, if you need help getting hold of a legislator and you're not sure where to find the intern list or where to get their phone numbers, reach out to us. We can help you get that. All right, last call for questions. And by last call, I mean last call for right now. You will be hearing a lot from us over the course of the next 7.5, 8 weeks. We're available. I don't want to oversell 24/7, but pretty dang close. Um, we're around a lot of the time. So if you need to reach out to us, really don't hesitate. Morning or night, we are on our phones and our emails all the time. So don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. Okay, Molly, I think I'll kick it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. So as a reminder for folks, and Justin, if you could hop to that event slide,
Oh,
if you still
yep, I
have that up,
can.
that would be very helpful. So thank you so much for joining us. Are wrapping up this Elected Officials Essentials series. We have one this Friday, and that is for our local officials who are in our LAA program. So that is, if you aren't sure, quick rule of thumb, if you do not have full-time administrative staff, and you have fewer than 10,000 residents in your community, you are likely an LAA community. This webinar on Friday, I will note, really isn't going to be relevant for anyone who is not an LEA community. And we really try to make sure that when we are having our programming and resources that are for our small communities, our rural communities, that we kind of hold that space for them. So if that isn't you, politely, we're going to ask that you don't go. We also, after our last time with Carrie, established that we're going to do a follow-up on that. We're still working on working on scheduling that. Local Officials Day is next week at the state capitol and at the Salt Palace. If you have a youth council, we encourage everyone to come, but we have some great programming for our youth council set up. NLC's Congressional Cities Conference will be in DC in March, and then our mid-year conference will be in April. I think Cassidy made a note of it in the chat, but just as a heads up for you all, we are still transitioning you from your personal emails or your campaign emails over to your official emails. Just a few notes on that. One, because we registered you for this kind of series with that first email, that is likely the email that will stick through the rest of this kind of EOE series. So don't be surprised if that email hasn't transitioned. It's just a lot of work for our staff to suddenly move, from like justinlee@gmail.com to justinlee at the league. So just note that, and then also note it's kind of a manual process that we're doing. So if you don't see it immediately, Cassidy is helping us pull these together, transition emails, get ready for the big event next week for LOD, get ready for the session. So we're working on it, but we have a small but mighty team, and it just takes it a little bit more to kind of get things done sometimes. So with that, thank you so much. If you have any other questions for league staff, always feel free to reach out. We're really excited to work with you all, and we're at 1 o'clock on the dot. So I think we'll just call it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.